Hi, everyone. Welcome into another It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. Sal Capaccio here with Matt Bove. And if you're watching on the video portion, which you can do, by the way, on YouTube at Sal Sports, in case you're like, hey, wait, these guys are on video. Yes, we like to show you our smiling faces and say hello. Matt is here. I'm here. Matt's in Studio Bove. I'm not in Studio Capaccio. I'm actually in our Odyssey complex here. I just got through with the morning show with Joe DiBiase here on WGR Sports Radio 550. Walked down the hall. This is like a production room that we're in. That we have. We have all these different, radio studios and rooms. It's kind of cool, actually.
If anybody is listening to this and listening only, I'm going to sound a little different. I am sick and I have been sick for a couple days. I feel like I got hit by a bus. Sal's voice is a little coarse because of the Micah Hyde softball game. If you're watching this, you'll see my nose. I look like Rudolph right now, and we're in the middle of May, which is not ideal. I guess there's a nice thing about this is that it's not the week of the PGA Championship, and hopefully I'm a little bit better by then. But right now, Sal, I do not remember feeling this sick in a long time. Probably legitimately since I had COVID in Italy, which was another just awesome Matt Bove story.
And it just hits you, right? Just hits you like that.
Yeah, it was out of the blue. Like I woke up on Saturday morning, I didn't feel good, and you would think that it would kind of slowly get better as the weekend moved along, and
Yeah.
it slowly got worse. So I went back to the doctor for the second time, and hopefully we're turning a corner here, but it does not feel like it right now. So I'm
Well,
apologizing if my voice sounds weird.
first of all, hope you feel better. Second of all, man, you are a trooper. Still doing this podcast and being a part of this while you're going through that. I appreciate you being available, but you don't have to, man. If you need to bow out at any point,
What
you
else
just.
am I going to do? I appreciate you saying that, but what else? I'm sitting here. You know what I mean? Like I'm not doing anything else.
I don't know. I don't know. I feel bad having to talk to you under these circumstances. I'll tell you that. But we do have some news and notes and different things to discuss when it comes to the Buffalo Bills. Hey, if you are watching, by the way, on the video version, we've had a lot of new people come to the YouTube page at Sal Sports on YouTube. The videos are really starting to pop right now as far as people saying, hey, they really like this sort of interaction. So we appreciate that from you. Check that out. And if you are watching, of course, if you want to just check out the audio, it's iTunes, it's Spotify, it's the Odyssey app, it's WGR 550, wherever you pod, you can find it. And of course, you can always see Matt on Channel 7, WKBW TV in Buffalo, and I'm on WGR Sports Radio 550. So now that we got all of that out of the way, the schedule will be released this week on
Mhm.
Thursday. I think the anticipation for this just grows every year in so many ways and for so many reasons, mostly because people just like to plan their entire falls, I think, Matt, around, their autumns and their early winters around getting together with other people around the country. BillsMafia travels so well. Like, it's a big part of the schedule, especially this year with a game in London. I think it's going to be October 8th. We're all kind of anticipating that. We
Yeah.
won't know for sure. Maybe by the time you hear this, you'll know exactly what date. But it's so cool how it's become an event because people just want to make sure that they can go somewhere, get together, make a destination, and party on with a bunch of BillsMafia members.
Typical NFL, right? You've got something basically every month of the year, even when there isn't any games happening. In March, it's free agency. In April, it's the draft. In May, it's the NFL schedule. June and July, a little bit of a lull until training camp starts back up. And yeah, I know there's a lot of people who say the schedule is overblown. You're going to play these opponents anyway. What difference does it make the order that they're in? But so many people are planning around the schedule. And I think that's one of the reasons why I get so excited about it. I'm excited to find out, when are we going to Los Angeles again? I'm excited to figure out, when are you going to be in London? I'm excited to figure out, are the Bills finally going to have a little bit of an escape in the winter because of Miami? Are they going to go there in December or November
Right?
instead of when it's still really nice here? And I've met so many people over the years, and I'm sure it's the same for you, who do yearly trips, who every year they pick a new destination that they go to, or they go to the same one. One of the guys I used to work with, our meteorologist, Andy Parker, him and his friends go to the Miami game every single year, regardless of when it is. They make that trip every year. Other people, they try and pick one game to go to, and they try and knock out all of the different stadiums, all of the different NFL markets. So this year, it's a fun one because there's some really cool games mixed in. I mean, we don't exactly know when they're going to fall, but going to Philly, like, that's an easy trip to make. You can hop in a car and you can drive to Philly. Kansas City, if you haven't done it yet, I know a lot of people are trying to get there at some point. You've had opportunities the last few years. Obviously, London, LA, those are high on the list. Cincinnati. There's a lot of really intriguing road matchups for the Bills this year.
All right, let's do that. Let's pull them up. Let's pull up the 2023 Bills opponents. All right,
Mhm.
and we don't know the dates yet as we're talking here. We're recording this on Tuesday morning. By the time people listen, they might know, especially because Wednesday, the opponent for London is going to be announced. The date is going to be
Mhm,
announced. But we do know the Bills are going to London. They have
mhm.
9 home games scheduled. One of those games will be shifted to London. There's talk it could be the Jacksonville Jaguars. They play back-to-back weeks maybe in London as a test for the NFL. There's talk it could be the Raiders. We just had Vinny Bonsignor on from Raider Nation on the radio program this morning, and he said, yeah, people in Las Vegas are thinking it could be the Raiders go. It could be the Giants, Brian Dable. How about the Cowboys, who haven't been there in 10 years, going to London? That could be it. But let's take a look at the actual destinations. Figure London in one of your 9. So you got the 8 road games, right, Matt?
Mhm.
The
Yeah,
8 road games and London.
yeah.
Is London atop the destination places? Does that beat out LA? It's got to be one of those 2, right?
I think so. I think it does. I've been to London once. I've been to LA a few times. You know, we're fortunate that travel is an aspect of this job. I think London, you can make more of a trip. Like, there's a lot of things, obviously, to do in Los Angeles. And if you're somebody who is wanting to go somewhere because of weather and escaping maybe bad weather in Buffalo, then maybe LA is the more intriguing option. But just think about London. And once you're over there, all of the different opportunities that it opens up. You can hop on a train and go to Paris. You can hop on a quick flight. You can go to Italy. You can go to Scotland. You can go to all these different places that are right there. And if you're listening to this and you've never done any travel overseas in Europe, all of that is pretty close. Like, I know London in the United Kingdom is its own thing, but you can get to a lot of different places once you're in London. So I would think that London is probably the top trip destination. Do you agree?
I think it has to be. I mean, the Bills haven't been there since 2015. They were in LA last year for the opener, and it is London. It's international. It's an event. It's different. I think the only thing that would pull fans back from saying that is, well, but it's a home game and you're playing it away from, and you're
Yeah.
kind of mad about that, right? But just don't think of it like that. I think if you just want to think of it as a chance to go and experience something totally cool and totally new. And the fact is, because it's a home game, Matt, we've heard from Ron Raccuia, Bill's executive vice president and COO, who said because it's a home game, they will have events surrounding it for the Bills. They will have events for Bills fans surrounding it. They're going to do some stuff with that. And considering Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, the new Bills Stadium, a lot of the design and the ideas have come for the way that's designed. So I think that's cool for Bills fans to go and see.
I also just did a quick Google search. So shout out Google. A train ride from London to Paris is 2 hours and 16 minutes. So it is not a long trip at all if you want to try and check both of those boxes. And I remember walking around London the first time that we went. Was that 2015 or 2016? I don't even remember.
20, actually, it was 2014. Doug Marone,
Was it
right? No,
2014?
it's 2015. It's Rex Ryan.
I,
2015,
I
yes.
remember walking through
2015,
the
sorry.
streets of London and like just
I said
looking at
Doug Marone
random.
because he was the head coach of or he was an assistant for the Jags at the time. But go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so I just remember like walking through the streets of London and looking at buildings and being like, "Wow, that building is older than the United States. Like that's a pretty old
Yes.
building."
Yes.
So it's just I'm a history nerd. I really like doing that kind of stuff. So I would say London is number one, and I don't even know if I would put LA at number two. I think London is number one,
Ooh, okay.
and then after that, I think I would put Kansas City at two if you haven't been to Kansas City.
Yeah, Kansas City's a good one because the barbecue, the people, they're really great. The people are great. They treat you, first class for sure. Kansas City's a great destination. I have a different one for me for the way that the team travels, and I think this is a little different for fans. My number 2 might be we usually stay. I travel with the team as part of the radio broadcast. We usually stay in Providence. And
Yeah.
Providence is an awesome city. I love going to Providence, especially when they do it in one of the usually November, December, around
Mhm.
Christmas time. There's the rink and you walk around, it's a little cold, you get in the bars, you have a drink, it's amazing. I love Providence. It's right on Federal Hill. You can smell all of the Italian restaurants and the bakeries. It's really cool.
I also think that that trip gets bumped up significantly if it's not the week of Christmas like it has been for the last several years, and if it's in the fall. Like, how cool would it be if the
There you
Bills
go.
play in the fall and you could go to Fenway to watch a Red
Yeah.
Sox game if you've never been to Fenway, and you could do all of that in one weekend? Or if the weather's just nice, there's things that you could go do. Like, you could walk around like Harvard's campus in the fall, and you can go and chill by the water and at the harbor. It's just Boston's an awesome. I love going to Boston, and I know, like you said, the team stays in Providence. I usually stay in Providence as well, but the last time I went, I stayed actually in the city of Boston,
Mhm.
and it was great. We went and watched the Celtics play against the Heat, and the Celtics. I think Jason Tatum put up like 49 points and could have hit 50 if he was like really pushing at the end, but they had won pretty handedly. That was the game that I don't want to get it wrong. Prince William and Princess Kate. Are they Prince and Princess?
I do not want to misspeak on this.
Will and Kate.
I don't know.
They were both.
So. I don't know.
They were both there, and I remember they showed them on the
Wow.
Jumbotron, and I was texting my wife. I took a picture and sent it to her, and she thought that was like the coolest thing in the world. She's like, "Oh my gosh, you're in the same building as Will and Kate! Like that's the coolest thing ever." And I kept telling her because it wasn't true. But the next day the Bills played, I was like, maybe they're going to watch Josh Allen tomorrow. I was like, maybe they're in Boston so they can watch the Bills play the Patriots tomorrow. Maybe that's why they made the trip.
October 25th, 2015. Yes, that was the last time the Bills were in London. By the way, I wanted to say the Kansas City game. Oh, there was something else to mention about the London game, and I forget. Oh, yeah, that's what it is. If it is October 8th, October 9th is a holiday here in the United States. Mm-hmm. It's, I think, formerly Columbus Day, now Indigenous Peoples Day. I think that's the official title of it, of the holiday. So if you do and plan on going, at least it's an extra day to come back and you're not missing anything, right? I guess that's the best way to kind of look at it.
And you're doing the whole like going back in time type deal because you're 5 hours ahead. So if you're in London and if you leave at noon, you're going to get back into New York at like 3:00 in the afternoon. So it's not like you would be rushing back and you would be getting in. I mean, I guess you could conceivably if you wanted to spend the day in London, but that does help because it's not like you're getting thrown back into things so quickly.
I love the Kansas City point you make. I do like going to Kansas City, although it's just been too much lately because the Bills have had to go there so often compared to the Chiefs coming to Buffalo because of the schedule rotation and how it works. The LA one is really interesting. I think we both really like going to Foxborough / Providence. LA, and by the way, Foxborough is okay too. They have Patriot Place right there at the stadium. It's really cool, by the way. LA, I like the eastern cities like New York, Boston, cities like that more than I like LA just as a city. The public transportation, it's a lot tougher. There isn't really any compared to like subways and ways to get around. But man, if you get a chance to go to that stadium like we did last year, Matt, that's the thing about LA. The Bills play at the Chargers this year. If you get a chance to go and be a part of that stadium and see it, that's the cool part about LA and the experience, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the stadium is a palace. It's unbelievable, but it's just, I don't know, something about it. If I always like experiences more so than just the game itself. Like the stadium in Los Angeles is obviously top notch, but that's why the tiebreaker for me always goes to places where you can really have an awesome experience. Like if you're somebody who enjoys going to games in Orchard Park and the tailgate atmosphere and just all of the fanfare that comes with that, then you would love Kansas City. The closest thing that there is to Orchard Park is Kansas 100%. City. And you can say that vice versa. You can say the
maybe Green Bay.
Yeah, I guess. But Kansas City, the tailgating, just like the vibe of the game, the atmosphere, it's cool. And also Arrowhead's an awesome place to watch a game. Now, we've kind of been spoiled the last couple of years that it's been every single year. And if you've already went once, then I don't think there's really a reason that you would have to go back unless you want to watch Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, which I guess is a pretty good reason. But yeah, that's why to me, like I like LA, but I only like LA if you can go and you can do other things while you're there. If the point of the trip is just the football game, then it's not that high on the list for me.
We took in an Angels game when we were there. My family came out for my wife and son for the opener last year. We made a little weekend out of it. The Bills played on Thursday. We did an Angels game while we were there. Saw Mike Trout, saw Ohtani. So that was cool. Trout actually hit a home run. So that was cool. Max really likes him. You're right. I think a lot of those things can kind of revolve around what's going on at the time. And LA is a better place if you're a Bills fan and want to go in the winter, as you mentioned a little while ago. All right. We have LA. We have Kansas City. We have Foxborough / Providence. Here's some other cities the Bills are going to. Philadelphia. They last went there 8 years ago. That was also, 2015. That was the return of LaShawn McCoy. It did not go well that day, and now the Eagles are the defending NFC champions. Philadelphia, a really cool city to visit. A lot of history, obviously. Rocky, you're going to talk about the steps. You want to do that. It's also one of these cities where the stadium is right downtown, and I think it's, the Bills, you have some of these like Pittsburgh and Cleveland. You've seen them. It's not like Foxborough. It's not like Kansas City. It's not like Green Bay. It's not like Buffalo. I think that's a cool experience to see some of these stadiums and how they interact with their cities and being downtown like in Philadelphia.
Well, it's downtown, but it's not like right in the heart of downtown, but it's a very close 10-minute train ride. And then they've got all of the facilities right there of the link. Is it still Citizens Bank Park? I think it is. And then the Wells Fargo Center. So that's another cool one because if there's other things happening that weekend, you could check off multiple things. You could go see the Phillies play if it's early in the fall. You could go see the Flyers play if it's that weekend, or obviously you could go see the Sixers play. They're a huge draw. So I always like double dipping because there are a few times, at least for us, that I feel like you can go to sporting events as fans. So when I can go to a sporting event and not have to cover it, especially if it's not football or hockey, I always really enjoy those experiences. I've been to Citizens Bank Park, and it's a cool ballpark. It's not the best, it's not the worst. I've never been to, if it's still called the Wells Fargo Center, I've never been to a Flyers game, and I've never been to a Sixers game. So I think it would be cool to experience that.
I guess you're right. I didn't realize it was a little bit outside downtown, actually. Downtown, where you see like the center city is what they call it in Philadelphia. But it is a hustle bustle area where the stadium's located. And I know that too because, sorry, back in 2015, when the Bills played there, it was a December game. And believe it or not, the Army Navy game was being played at the exact same time our team buses were driving by on the freeway at the stadium. And it was, I know, of just a very busy part. So it's not directly downtown, like you said, but it's still pretty cool. And I've only been there. Well, they did play preseason. Have you been to that stadium yet?
Yes, once, but it was a preseason game actually
Yep.
for me. I was not there in 2014 when they played against the LaShawn McCoy revenge game. So I was there in the preseason once.
All right. Well, the Bills obviously have another division team that they see every year, and that is New York. And I think that, New Jersey is where they play against the Jets. But if you want to make that trip, there's always things to do in Manhattan. There's always things to do around the city. There's always things to do even in New Jersey if you want to,
Yeah.
stay out there like usually we do with the team. The one year it was the Bills playing. Remember when the Bills played after Rex was fired? The Bills played on New Year's Day against the Jets, right? So New Year's Eve we had to stay in that area. Well, the issue was because it was New Year's Eve, there were not a lot of hotels, so they had to put us like 20 miles outside where we normally stay, and it's usually been Jersey City, and that is a
Yeah.
very very short subway ride into Manhattan. And then I like to go in Manhattan and experience everything.
I got a cool Jersey City Bills story. The last
Okay,
year that I was, the Channel 7 was the official station of the Bills, the hotel room was part of the deal between the two teams. So I always stayed at the team hotel. And in 2019, the year that they opened against the Jets and then played the Giants the same weekend. So I went in, I checked into the hotel in Jersey City. Everything was smooth. The Bills won that game. They come from behind, big win to start the year. I go back the next weekend to the same hotel and I go
that's
check
right.
in. And it was the exact same room. It was all the accommodations were the exact same. And I was like, oh, that's funny. Like I stayed in the exact same room last week. And they were like, yeah, once the Bills won, they said to just run it back with all of the exact same rooms. So then I saw Brandon and Joe Shane on a walk that morning before the game. We were just like going to get coffee. And I was like, are you guys a little superstitious? And they're like, a little. It was pouring raining outside. They're like, we went on a walk last week before the Jets game. So we're doing it again in the pouring rain. So we make sure that we can kind of keep the same thing going for that game. So I also love that trip. I know that it happens every single year. I also think that's one of the ones where if it happens at the right time of year, it
Yep.
becomes that much better. Like a Jets game in late November, early December is so cool because then you get to do Christmas in New York, which is just
Rockefeller Center.
like magical.
Yeah, it is. And I actually like it in October. If Syracuse is playing on a Saturday, I've gone into the East End bar. It's a Syracuse bar, actually. And I've watched Syracuse games there with friends that I would meet up with. So that's pretty cool as well. All right, we got a few more cities to run through here on the Bills away schedule. We'll find out this week exactly when they'll be visiting these teams. Matt, one of those cities is South Beach, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Hollywood, however you want to term it. What's been your experience going to Bills games down there?
It's too hot. I get uncomfortable. I sweat too much. I wonder why we always have to go early in the season. I think that if it was later in the year, I would really enjoy the escape. But even last year, I remember the last couple years since the pandemic, you don't have an insane amount of options for direct flights down to Miami and down to Lauderdale anymore. So it just becomes kind of a big process to even get down there. So it's okay.
Yeah, that's been kind of the theme lately. The bless you. That's been kind of the theme lately with the Heat. Obviously, last year they all the plays that the guys had, the guys getting IVs and going to the locker rooms and things like that. But if you go down to the Bills game in Miami, I'm going to tell you this, folks. There is no shortage of Bills parties. There's no
Yeah.
shortage of Bills fans to hang out with. I mean, you drive down A1A, and typically what happens, this is a very cool part of the trip, Matt. So typically what happens is games on a Sunday, let's say 1 o'clock. On Saturday, team plane lands, we load the buses. They literally take the route on purpose to the team hotel It's usually in the same area in Fort Lauderdale, right down through A1A where Bills fans are lining the streets. I have videos. I'm on the bus filming these people, and they're lining A1A, going crazy for the Buffalo Bills. It is awesome. It's just a great, great feeling when you see that. Then you get to the hotel and you're like, you can walk either direction, and you're basically going to hit hundreds of Bills fans no matter where you go. And it's a super cool party.
What's that bar? Elbow Room that everybody always
Elbow room,
goes to? Elbow
elbow room
Room?
is where you have, yep, elbow room is where you have a big Bills party every year. And then I always try to go to Russ Salvatore's party. He has a party, the restaurateur here in Buffalo. He has a party down at the Blue Martini, which is not far either. It's a very short cab or Uber ride or whatever. And I see a lot of people just, that I've seen over the years at this party, and people come down, they go to that. And there's a DJ or a live band, and there's just a lot of cool things to do for Bills fans down there. And then you get to the game, and of course, you just have to make sure you're ready for the heat.
It's just so hot, and every year I made the mistake, I think my first year going to a game there wearing a suit, and I remember looking at all of the other
Ooh.
reporters there, and they're like, "What are you doing? Like, this is the game where you put on a polo and you put on golf pants and you call it a day. It's just not worth it." And then even when you put on the polo and the golf pants, you're like, "This was a terrible idea. This is so, so hot." So, obviously, if you're somebody who's interested in going to that game, be cognizant of what side you're sitting on because it's funny. I know we all made a big deal out of it last year with the weather and how much hotter the Bills sideline is, but those tickets are substantially cheaper as well on the Bills sideline because you're just sitting there baking in the sun. That being said, if they play there in November or December, it might be kind of nice. You might enjoy it. But if it's September, I mean, you're talking about a day that's 90, 95 degrees, and then inside the stadium, it's like 105
Do you have a prediction on whether that game will be earlier or later this year based on our conversation with Mike North a couple of weeks ago?
later. I think it's going to be later. And I think that the New England game is going to be earlier because he almost made it seem like if there was a trend, they would go out of their way to make sure that that didn't continue. So that's why I think they're going to play the Patriots and the Jets earlier in the year, and they're going to play the Dolphins later in the year, at least in Miami. Or maybe they flip. Maybe Miami comes here early and the
Yep.
Bills go to Miami late.
I have a feeling that's going to happen too. We'll find out. By the way, Mike North, VP of Broadcast Planning, great episode with him on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. Check it out. You can find it on the video portion at Sal Sports on YouTube. You can find it on our page here, iTunes, Spotify, wherever. But a really cool over hour long conversation about the schedule, how it's made, what to expect this year. All right, keeping with the theme of if there are things to do like baseball games or some other event to go to, the Bills do go to our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., a great tourist city, obviously. I'm excited about that because every time gone to Washington, I've always had a good time. And one year, I remember they had like a big Christmas setup over by the Washington Monument. It was lights everywhere. You just go, you walk through it. There's always something cool going on in that city.
Yeah, it's also the worst stadium probably in the entire NFL. So that's the one thing. It's like you've got to make the trade off of if you want to take in all of the really cool things that are in DC, which I would recommend, you then
Worst
have
press
to.
box location, or I know worst radio press box location, worst visiting radio booth location. Maybe Miami's number one. It's number two, but either way, Miami and Washington, the two worst radio booth locations. What about for the press box itself?
I can't remember exactly where the press box is, but I just do remember the stadium. It's just so blah. There's
Yeah,
nothing like really about it that you're like, wow,
right.
this is incredible. I never went to the old Coliseum, so I've heard people say that the Coliseum in Oakland was pretty similar. But for me, it's Jacksonville and it's Washington. Those two stadiums are just not great.
And that's why they're thinking about yet another one in Washington. They just built this one, what, 25 years ago, I think, where they play now. And I have been to Oakland. The atmosphere for the game is incredible. It was the black hole, but yes, the stadium was the worst stadium. The locker rooms and the bowels and all that kind of stuff. When you watch the movie Moneyball and you have all those old those the
Uh-huh.
locker room and you're sitting there with the TV and he's watching, all that's real. That's actually where everybody goes to, lift weights and have their locker room talks and things like that.
I think of the places that we have mentioned that maybe aren't in the immediate higher tier, DC, if you're not somebody who really cares about the actual stadium, should be pretty high on the list just because there are so many things to do. DC is sneaky hot though, because the entire city is just big concrete. So that would be one where you would probably want it to be a little bit later in the year. So you're not like, I remember preseason games in Washington are just a nightmare because it's just so hot. I'm also probably an outlier here. I do not like to be hot. I would rather be cold than be hot. I always think you
Okay.
can add on another layer, but you can't take off another layer. At least not
Oh
always.
man, yeah,
So
not
I'm
me. I like being hot, and in fact, the hotter the better for golf. I like to
Oh,
golf in the
no
hottest weather possible.
way. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
What is your ideal temperature to like go play golf in?
Oh, I'm fine with like mid 80s,
Oh, I I
mid low 80s, low 80s. I think my ideal probably high 70s, but I'm totally fine in the 80s.
I think my ideal round of golf would be like 60 degrees.
Yeah, we're
6
definitely different in that regard.
60 degrees, the sun out, a little breeze.
All right, so
That's what I want.
let's wrap it up with the visiting cities with one that I really was impressed with last year. Unfortunately, everything happened in the game on Monday Night Football, but
Yeah.
Cincinnati is a
Mhm.
very cool place with a really cool row and area. Like think if you're in Buffalo, like they got, I don't know, Allentown, Chippewa, but it's a little bit more of a like a closed off area. And I can't remember what they call it down there in Cincy. I'll have to
It's
get it, but
it's
what's
right
it
in
called?
between, I don't know, but it's
Yes,
right in between the ballpark and the stadium,
yes,
and
it's
it's like this
awesome.
really cool little stretch
Great.
there.
Yes.
I was pleasantly surprised with Cincinnati. Last year was my first real time in Cincy. I had been once to go to a baseball game, but it was just like driving through and a quick stop. I liked Cincinnati a lot more than I don't want to say that I thought I would, but there was a lot more to do there than I had anticipated there would be. And then, everything happened.
Yeah, it was, and you know what? Um, I think at that time, by that time, the game became obviously really big for both teams. So the fans were out in full force. There was some good smack talking going on. Not really nothing bad actually, but it was kind of fun to see both fan bases out there and enjoying it and going at it a little bit. But yeah, and I had a good time. Eric Woods, he is from there,
Mhm.
and we got to go to a lot of places that he was very familiar with people and things like that. So that was a cool experience to be a part of that. But I will tell you, wherever we went, Bills fans having a good time, a lot of history, a lot of sports history in Cincinnati, the baseball team, obviously, the football team, that can be found a lot of places as well. All right. So those are the 9 places the Bills will travel to this year, including London. And then, of course, you have the 8 home games. Is there a home game that you are dead set against? Please do not make this the London game. We need this in Buffalo. Do not move this game to London.
Dallas. Dallas, I do not want to see in London. I think that could be such a cool atmosphere between, Steph and his brother. I think it's going to be a primetime game. I think it checks way too many boxes. That to me feels like just a perfect Sunday night football or Monday night football matchup. Maybe not right at the beginning of the year, but a couple weeks into the year. I just think Dallas only comes here so often. There's obviously a huge following for the Cowboys. I don't want Buffalo, Orchard Park to lose that game. That would be the one at the top of my list.
Yeah, me too. And I'm looking. So Dallas did play in, where did they go? 2019, as somebody said to me. I'm looking here. I
I
thought it was
just
before that.
I just don't
Last time
see
they
them
played.
putting that game. I just don't see them putting that game in London.
No, no. Okay, it wasn't. That's right. Okay, I don't know what I saw here. 2019. 'Cause I'm like, there's no way. If you go back, the last time Dallas played, I think here we go. 2014. It looks like was the last time they played in London, and it could very well be them. I agree with you. I would hate to see that game move. That is a cool game for Bills fans to see the Dallas Cowboys at home. And I'll go back before your time, Matt. I'll go back to 1985. The Bills were 2-14. One of those wins was at home against the Dallas Cowboys. And on the first play of the game, Greg Bell took it 85 yards to the house. Like that was like the first game of the year, the first win of the year after being 0-10 or something like that. It was cool. And it was, of course, the Dallas Cowboys who had this great tradition and the star on their helmet. And then, of course, the Monday night game when
Yeah.
Dallas came to Buffalo. I'm sure you remember that one pretty well.
That's the one that I always think of when I think of Dallas coming to Buffalo, and I think of the kick returns, and I think of the end of the game and all the interceptions from Tony Romo and T.O. and just, man, this team has just figured out how to lose in these poetic ways. That game was just soul crushing. I remember I was in school, and I remember the next day it was like, and the Bills weren't even good. Like, it's not like the game really mattered. It was just the national stage, the Bills against the Cowboys. You would have loved to pull out a win, and they did not.
All right. Well, we'll find out exactly what's going to happen with the NFL schedule this week. On Wednesday, the international games will be announced. There will also be select games for the opener will probably be announced on Thursday morning because that's when the NBC will get their crack at announcing some of the games. We'll get select games and leaks as we go forward here, but we will get everything on Thursday night. In the meantime, the Bills are getting together to prepare for these games while they have rookie minicamp and OTAs coming up. Rookie minicamp this coming weekend, I guess we could say it that way, Matt.
Yeah.
You're going to see Friday, Saturday, Sunday rookies out in the field in Orchard Park for the Buffalo Bills. A lot of talk about how Dalton Kincaid fits into the equation here. I think he's super interesting, but I think as we get a little farther from the draft, for me, maybe the middle linebacker spot in Dorian Williams, if he can actually take on some reps there. I know that there was some talk early that that wouldn't happen, but I think the Bills left that door open a little bit after the draft, and maybe that's something that they'll investigate.
Yeah, that's the big one for me because I think Dalton Kincaid is going to find the field. I think Osiris
Right.
Torrance might not find the field immediately, but I think it'll happen, if not this year, very frequently going into next season. But Dorian Williams is the one of like, how are they going to utilize this guy? And I know they do not rush players onto the field. We saw that with Terrell Bernard last year, but I would imagine that they have to figure something out with losing Tremaine. Like, is it going to be Terrell Bernard? Is it going to be Tyrell Dodson? Is Dorian Williams going to somehow be involved in this? And that's all assuming that Matt Milano stays healthy really for, a big chunk of the season. So the linebacker to me going into really rookie minicamp, into OTAs, into training camp, that is far and away the most interesting position battle in my eyes.
What do you think the chances are that Justin Shorter makes the roster?
Good.
The wide receiver from Florida.
Good. I would say 75%. I think he would have to play himself off the roster.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to play himself onto the roster.
Yeah, fifth round pick. I think you'd expect him to. You'd want him to. And Brandon Beane even said we think he can get a jersey. But it was interesting when he said that it was get a jersey because of special teams. Being a gunner is what his specialty seems to be, and that's why I do give him a shot as well. Then you get to Nick Broker, the seventh round pick, the first of two seventh round picks. I find personally Broker and Alex Austin, their second seventh round pick. I think they're very much in opposite boats here. I think Broker has a much more legitimate path to the roster than Alex Austin does, which screams to me a lot more practice squad development because they have so many guys at that particular spot.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I would think really, besides their top 4 picks, those are really the only locks to make the roster. I don't even want to say locks because I just said 75% for Justin Shorter. I think Broker and I think Austin. It's a coin flip, but we wouldn't have been sitting here doing this conversation last year about Christian Benford and thinking that he was going to make the team, and look at the impact that he ended up making.
Speaking of Christian Benford and some of the players that will be at that position, he was a part of the Micah Hyde charity softball game on Sunday. My voice is a little bit back, but you could see it just crack right there a little bit. I was the on-field MC, very honored to do that again, Matt. And of course, the home run derby is a big part of it. And then you have the game. A couple of things that stood out to me from that game on the field and off the field. Let's talk about off the field because I get to do the player introductions, which to me is one of the coolest parts of the afternoon is announcing the players. It's all off the cuff. It's all ad lib. I just basically say something about that player and they run out. And one of the players, I know everybody by face generally. There's a couple guys who might be new, like Cortez Broughton. I didn't know him by face. I'm like, oh, Cortez Broughton. I look at the back of his jersey. Who is he? He tells me, make sure I say his name, right? Things like that. There was a guy, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know this guy. Why can't I place him? And I said, I'm sorry. Like, who are you again? I looked. He had nothing on the back of his jersey. It was Damian Harris. All right.
Oh, okay.
And so I introduced him, and I said to the crowd, a guy we have really learned to hate or love to hate the last 4 years, I think I said, but now we're going to really love him in Buffalo, running back Damian Harris, and he got a big applause. I'm just curious what you think his role is for this team on the actual NFL football field in 2023.
I think if Damian Harris is healthy, there's a path for Damian Harris to be the Bills' number 1 running back this year. I really do. I like Damian Harris' game. I think obviously you invested a lot in James Cook, but they feel like they're pretty slow with some of these decisions and kind of acclimating these guys into it. But the big question is his health. He hasn't been healthy for a lot of his career. So I think there's a chance, but we shall see. I'm going to stop talking because I feel not great.
All right, no problem. The last thing I'm going to say here is if you want to jump in on it, home run derby was awesome. Josh Allen did not defend his title. Yeah. He came a little later because he was at the Kentucky Derby. Well, we knew that, so we just advanced him to the finals. He tied Spencer Brown. They had to go another round. They tied again, and then we just said longest home run wins, longest shot, longest hit. Spencer Brown, he didn't hit the ball very far. All Josh had to do was hit it to the outfield. He tried so hard, he actually fouled it off, which was incredible. Spencer Brown winds up winning it. Both players, Matt, hit balls out of the stadium at Sal and Field. Spencer Brown over the Bully Hill sign in right field. Josh Allen over the net in left field and the height
Yeah.
of it even.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. I mean, these guys are just freak athletes. That's at the end of the day, Spencer Brown and Josh Allen, they're not just football players, they're freak athletes. I wish I obviously wasn't there because once again, I feel like I got hit by a train, but it would have been cool if they would have did like the flickering light and like the natural music like they do when there's a home run. That would have been really cool. But yeah, I'm sure the event
Well,
was amazing.
and I will say this, the defense won on a walk-off grand slam by Micah Hyde. So the natural theme played as he rounded the bases, which was
Poetic.
super cool. It was a great day. They raised about $500,000, maybe probably more
That's
overall
amazing.
for the Imagine for Youth Foundation for Micah. Checks were given out and for $470,000 plus all the merch and concessions and all that stuff. Everybody who's donating and being a part of it. It was a really fun night, really fun day, I should say. Look forward to it next year. Hope you could be a part of it. Hope you could be a part of listening to this podcast when Matt
Yeah.
feels a little bit better the next time we do it. Matt, let's just get you out of here and let's get everybody out of here. Thanks,
Yeah,
buddy.
thank you everybody for bearing with us because I really don't feel good. But hopefully by the next time we can talk, we'll have the Bills schedule. We can break it down, and
Yes,
I won't be sneezing and blowing my nose every 20 seconds.
that's okay. And thank you very much once again to Lucas Buckley, our producer, always doing a good job behind the scenes, making sure everything is out there for you to watch on YouTube at Sal Sports. And of course, listen wherever you pod. It's always game day in Buffalo.